it is only because of Russian invasion we have food crisis in the world, and we have energy crisis in the world and in Europe and in UK in particular.
The first ship carrying grain from Ukraine for people in the hungriest parts of the world has docked at Djibouti on the Horn of Africa. Areas of East Africa badly affected by drought and conflict had previously relied on grain coming from Ukraine and Russia before Russia invaded Ukraine in February. Food security experts have said it could take weeks for people in African countries to receive the grain, however, and even longer for it to bring down high food prices that have caused hunger and provoked protests in many countries. Well, here to discuss is Andrii Osadchuk, Ukrainian MP for the Voice Party in Kyiv. Andrii, very nice to have you back on the programme again. Can you perhaps remind our listeners of how Russia's invasion has affected the grain exports?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. So first of all, we all need to remember and to understand that it is only because of Russian invasion we have food crisis in the world, and we have energy crisis in the world and in Europe and in UK in particular. It is very long-lasting Russian strategy, which now we all see, and which we all will have to defeat with the consolidation of all of our efforts. Ukraine luckily appeared to be a big player in the global food market. And in fact, Russia intentively blocked all Ukrainian Black Sea ports, in fact, in early March, in fact, limiting all deliveries of absolutely heroic result of 2021, when Ukraine agriculture was able to collect more than 100 million tons of grain and all agricultural products, which was the historical record.
So how did this ship get out?
The majority of last year harvest was delivered to the global market before the end of 2021. But still a huge amount of agricultural products remained in Ukrainian warehouses. And that was one of the reasons why we reached the so-called grain deal with the United Nations and under leadership of Turkey, which is very risky, by the way, from political point of view. It creates a lot of threats for us when you take a big picture of the war. But nevertheless, for 1 month of grain deal, it started working, I think, from the 1st of August this year. So for 1 month, we already delivered 1.3 million tons of grain to global market. Yes, several of ships with Ukrainian grain already reaching the most starving regions in Africa. So meaning that this deal gives a visible result as for Ukraine, as for the Africa, as for the United Nations, because at least they show to the world that they can do at least something during such a huge crises and conflicts like a big war in Europe, big war in Ukraine.
And how long does this deal continue? Because the difficulty in sending grain has had a very bad impact, hasn't it, in areas like Tigray, Ethiopia, and Somalia?
We need to understand that from the very, very beginning, this deal was extremely fragile. And if you remember, after the day of execution of this deal, next day, Russia was shelling Odessa seaport with missiles just to demonstrate who is the master of the game. So for me, as for the guy who is sitting in Kyiv and participating in all these processes, every day when we're able to receive and send vessels with the grain to the outside world is a miracle. So I can give zero forecast for how long this deal will exist. As more is better, because we still have a lot of resources of the warehouses of the agricultural products from the last year. And please note that despite of the huge war in Ukraine, we still have a good harvest from 2022. If I'm not mistaken, Ukraine was able to collect more than 50 million tons of grain and agricultural product this year, meaning that we will have more to offer to outside world. So hopefully all stakeholders will continue to work with this issue, but everything is extremely unpredictable. and every day the deal can collapse.
I understand. Well, thank you very much for making that so clear to us. Andrii Osadchuk, a Ukrainian MP for the Voice Party in Kyiv. Thank you for joining me here on Times Radio.